headlines, sorting through the media bias, exposing the propaganda, and challenging you to use your brain. It's time to tap into the truth.
Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed time to tap into the truth. Coming to you live from historic Roane County, Tennessee, this is your host, Tim Tapp. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're talking about a few different items in the news, but primarily we're going to be talking later as our primary topic, the Sequester and the Hypocrites. Wonder if any of you guys can guess where I'm going with this. At any rate, let's go ahead and start getting into some of the news notes of the day. Of course, the Sequester is the big talk of the day on most of the media outlets and with social media as well, including Twitter. If you're looking at any of the conservative outlets, the Sequester is, of course, a source of outrage at the moment, not only because it attacks one of the golden cows of the conservative movement of our defense budget, but also because, quite frankly, this is a monstrosity that was created under the guidance and leadership of the occupier. Obama, who has been out there lambasting Republicans, blaming the GOP, going on and on and on about how terrible this is and how it's all the Republicans' fault for the last little bit, couple of weeks now, getting louder and louder as we get closer and closer to the date of the Sequester, still refuses to admit that this thing was created because of his own lack of leadership, his own inability to get things done, and this was part of the result of his solution as it was put forth with this great and grand effort. But before we get too far into that, let's go ahead and look at a few things. One of the things I told you we were keeping an eye on, and I will continue to keep an eye on, is what I thought was a pivotal Supreme Court case looking at Barack Obama's legitimacy as far as the records and the documentation. And, of course, a lot of folks claiming this is a birther issue. I think it's a legitimate constitutional issue. There has been a great deal of investigation at this point, and there is no question that the occupiers' documentations are sketchy at best. Several of them are obviously fraudulent. The so-called birth certificate that he finally posted, an obvious fraud. The only proof you need of that is the fact that the hospital listed at the time of birth, the name is different now than it was then. So they got the location correct, but they have the wrong name on it. And that's a paperwork error that would not be there. Now, the Supreme Court dismissed. They're not going to look into it any further. And there was another so-called birther case that also got dismissed this past Tuesday as well. But rest not, the case is not necessarily over, as Dr. Orly Tate, or Taze, Orly Tate, I believe is the proper pronunciation. She is the lady who is still pushing this particular case, and she has again filed another round of paperwork. Evidently, she has evidence, and this is the basis of the appeal, trying to get it brought back again, and also demanding a Judiciary Committee investigation from the Senate and the House that 5 of the 9 Supreme Court justices did not receive all of the legal paperwork necessary to read, to determine, and to vote appropriately up and down as to whether or not they should hear the case in full session. So we'll see what's going on with that, and I will be making an effort to see if I can't get the good doctor to actually spend a little time on Tapping the Truth on Blog Talk version, and if I can make that happen, the interview will also be available here on Spreaker. So those of you who follow one but not the other, feel free to check us out. And I'll also be posting on our up-and-coming website. Tap Into the Truth does now have a website. It is currently under construction, so don't going to tapintothetruth, one word, .com just yet. But it is a work in progress, and I will let you guys know as soon as it is available, and we'll start linking to stories like that and to the broadcast on both formats. Also in the offbeat news today, and this is making some waves a little bit, and I have a feeling over the course of the next week it's going to make even bigger waves. The WWE has created a Tea Party wrestler. Now, I don't know how many of y'all out there are wrestling fans, or as we like to say here in East Tennessee, wrestling fans. But I myself, I grew up as one. I enjoyed watching the male soap opera drama that is professional wrestling because it's just fun, and boys can be boys, and you get to act like you're beating the crap out of each other. You know, back when children were allowed to play, and back when boys were allowed to be boys without having to be drugged up on Ritalin or who knows what else. But at any rate, the WWE is a company that is based primarily on appealing to middle-class America, which, whether the so-called progressives like it or not, are mostly conservative in nature. So the fact that they would turn a villain as heel into a Tea Party guy, first of all, it's not only disappointing, but it's a bit surprising coming from the same company that has organized these support for the troops kind of activities that the WWE has been involved with since the first Iraq War. They do a tribute to the troops special show. They actually go over to, it has in the past been in Iraq, they continue to go to Afghanistan, where they put on a live show for the troops that are deployed there. And, you know, for them to take this route, I'm flabbergasted. I really don't even know what to say about it, except for the fact that this is just a slap in the face as far as I'm concerned. Not only am I a fan, but I am a stockholder in the company. Not that I have a large amount of stock. Not a particularly impressive portfolio, I might add, but given the price and the regular dividends, it's reasonable if you get involved with a company like sharebuilder.com, for example, which puts the stock market into the hands of any person who has a bank account. It doesn't matter if you have tons of money to invest. You just can't expect tons of returns. The one thing about ShareBuilder that it lets you do, and I probably ought to get some type of remuneration for the basic commercial I'm running for them right now, is that you literally can put just a few dollars here and there and build a portfolio over time. If you start young enough, you can have a nice nest egg by the time you're ready to retire. But at any rate, I am a stockholder via ShareBuilder, and have been a fan of the company over the years. I got to admit, it's been quite a while since I've watched. But, yeah, it really is a bizarre move for the WWE, given that its audience, which is mostly middle America, like I said. The character's name is Zeb Colter. He's supposedly a Vietnam veteran who criticizes people who don't speak English and have faces I don't even recognize, as a quote from one of the things he said. He talks about deporting immigrants with no distinction about legal or illegal. And he's using, as his villainous catchphrases, truth and we the people. I mean, this is insulting. It is absolutely insulting. Not only that this is coming from a company that has been a staunch conservative supporting type of organization, who's run by Linda McMahon, who has run for Congress as a Republican twice now, and unfortunately she hasn't won. But it also leads into the question of some of our friends in the New England area. What passes for a Republican in New England couldn't get a Democratic primary win in parts of the South and the West, I suppose. They tend to be a little more liberal even when they're conservative up that way. But to have somebody turn this into an attack on the Tea Party, it's just insane. And I know this is in the offbeat, and I don't normally spend this much time on an individual topic in the offbeat news, but for crying out loud, Vince McMahon, I'm calling you out here on the air. What is wrong with you? What are you thinking? Whoever is in charge of your character development and your talent development at this point, somebody needs to be answering for this, because not only is this not appropriate, but it plays into the hands of everything you've stood opposed to in the past. Speaking of our friends from the New England part of the country, the supposed independent Bloomberg is going to be spending millions of dollars against a pro-gun Democrat in an Illinois primary. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. As most of you know by now, former Representative Jesse Jackson Jr. Has, of course, had to give up his seat. He's probably going to prison. He has finally admitted he pled guilty, and that news has been all over the place today. Pled guilty to misappropriation of taxpayer funds and misappropriation of campaign funds, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. His wife was spending this money too. She's being investigated. That news broke last week. Big debacle. But as it turns out, in the special election to replace Jesse Jackson Jr., there was a huge national gun control debate that's going to be taking over, because there's an anti-gun crusader, Mike Bloomberg, the billionaire New York City mayor. Well, his super PAC is poised to dump at least $2 million into the race. This was being reported by the Politico earlier this week. The staggering sum for the single house race that's meant to thwart the National Rifle Association aligned Democrat, who was cruising along as the front-runner until a barrage of Bloomberg-financed attack ads hit the airwaves. The massive independent expenditure by Independence USA PAC dwarfs what any of the 17 Democratic candidates have raised themselves. It's a none too subtle statement of Bloomberg's intentions to take on the NRA after the Newtown, Connecticut school shootings. Though it's debatable how much of a test case it is, since the NRA is staying out of the race. The bulk of Bloomberg's cash is financed on-air war against Debbie Halvorson. If I'm getting that name wrong, Debbie, I apologize. Anyway, she's a former one-term congresswoman and a long-time ex-state legislator with an A rating from the NRA. The lone white candidate in the Democratic field, she's hoping that her base of suburban and rural voters in the southern outskirts of the district, who by and large favor gun rights, will be enough to give her a small, paltry it will take to win. The Democratic primary is going to be held on February 26th. For those of you who are interested in keeping track of this story, well, I suppose we'll keep an eye on it ourselves here. The general election is all but irrelevant given the district's heavy Democratic makeup. For those of you who still think that it's absolutely ridiculous to be concerned about drones over the American skies, guess what? The FAA is working to fill the skies with drones. In an article written by Sam Rowley of Personal Liberty Digest, it's been reported that last week President Barack Obama approved legislation that will likely rapidly increase the use of drones for surveillance in the United States. Surveillance. Key word there. The FAA Modernization Act of 2012, which contains provisions to modernize aviation laws and to immediately integrate unmanned aircraft systems, was